What is poppin' YouTube? Bringing you some Dynasty breakouts for 2024. These guys I am cementing, I am trading for, I am having them, holding them on my team because I think they are taking the next step in 2024. First guy is going to be Garrett Wilson. And if you've been in the Dynasty streets for a minute, there's been a lot of people in their Dynasty wide receiver rankings debating Garrett Wilson or Puka Nacua. And there are some sickos out there that are still putting Garrett Wilson a spot ahead Puka Nacua. Now, I am not one of those guys, even though I do believe Garrett Wilson has the similar type upside. We just saw Puka Nacua have maybe the most amazing rookie season since Justin Jefferson on the wide receiver field. So I still have Puka Nacua a spot ahead. So Garrett Wilson, depending on how you do your rankings, wide receiver 6 to wide receiver 8. But Garrett Wilson to me is one of the most undervalued / no one's really talking about the upside of Garrett Wilson in this New York Jets offense. Because if we actually compare the rookie season that Garrett Wilson had, while it wasn't great in 2022, 17 games, 147 targets, 12.7 fantasy points per game, then into his second sophomore campaign in 2023 with only 12.5 fantasy points per game, the thing you're going to notice, it's very similar. There wasn't a lot of improvement. I mean, we saw Aaron Rodgers carry the flag out there, pretty much get on the field for one play and then leave. But the thing is, if you actually start to dive deep into the metrics on Garrett Wilson in this rookie season, you're going to actually see how similar his rookie season could have been to Justin Jefferson if he just had any sort of resemblance of some quarterback help. So if we're looking, of course, in the rookie season for Justin Jefferson, he averaged wide receiver 9 on a points per game basis during his rookie season, 17.1 points per game. He commanded 125 targets and had 1,400 receiving yards. That, of course, is no small feat. Garrett Wilson, like we just said, wide receiver 30 numbers with 12.7, 147 targets with only 1,100 yards. So really, how does this compare? So the big thing is if you take the splits from the rookie season with Garrett Wilson, because of course you had Zach Wilson throwing the ball a little bit, you had Michael White throwing the ball a little bit, you're going to see that with Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson averaged 11.43 points per game, 4.31 receptions, and 7.52 targets. In the 4 games with Mike White, Garrett Wilson had 17.27 points per game, 6.7 receptions, 12.5 targets, and 75 receiving yards, which was on a similar pace to Justin Jefferson's rookie season numbers. Now, we can't just look at the data and pull out the splits from this rookie year and say, yeah, cool, Garrett Wilson is on a Justin Jefferson-like trajectory, because we didn't see this in year 2. So we're heading into year 3, and we still haven't seen the full Garrett Wilson breakout up to this point. But I will say this, JJ made a huge jump from 17.1 points per game in his rookie season to 19.4 in his second season. So I think that was the similar type jump that we were going to be expecting from Garrett Wilson with a full season Aaron Rodgers. Of course, we didn't get that. We got back to Zach Wilson, who Zach Wilson honestly maybe looked worse this second season for Garrett Wilson than he did in his rookie season. So taking all of this aside, I think Garrett Wilson is supremely undervalued. I think Garrett Wilson has every type of upside to enter into the top 4, top 3 wide receiver conversation. I mean, I think you're still going to have JJ, CD Lamb, Jamar Chase, whatever you like in that order, in that flavor. But I think Garrett Wilson, as much as we're all hyped about Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze entering this draft, and we like Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think we could be talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown and Garrett Wilson in this tier behind after the season with Garrett Wilson and a full season of Aaron Rodgers. We just need to see some better QB play, because all the metrics, the snap shares, the target rate, the target shares, the targets, the route participation, everything screams that Garrett Wilson can get open. He gets the targets. Can he just get him a quarterback that can throw him the ball? Now, I know it's a bold thing to say that Garrett Wilson's going to be Justin Jefferson. Like, I'm not over here saying that by any stretch of the imagination. But I think right now, when we're talking about dynasty assets that are going to break out and that are headed for stardom, I know Garrett Wilson, he's a pretty sexy asset just because there's a lot of us pumping up this freaking potential that he has. But I'm all in on Garrett Wilson and investing at current cost on keep, trade, cut, and or just holding him on my team, because I think we're going to be looking at him being an elite tier level asset here just in a few months once the season kicks off and we start to see what he can do with a real quarterback. My next guy I think that is headed for dynasty startup and dynasty breakout is going to be JSN. And if you've watched any dynasty channel on the YouTube space this year, there's been a lot of people that have said, hey, I'm out on JSN. The year 1 breakout didn't happen. Him being the wide receiver 1 heading into last year, like I just don't think it's going to ever happen for JSN to the level that we think it's going to happen for JSN. Now, I watched a really impressive video by one of my good friends, Mason, over at Dynasty Flock, and he really dove into the historical comparisons, the historical comps for Jackson Smith and Jigba, and his overall, where he finished, where he didn't have 700 yards as rookie, he had 628 in the 17 games played, 93 targets, 63 receptions. My big thing with JSN is of course, all the hype was there, fell to pick 20, so he wasn't like a high-end first-round pick by any stretch of the imagination, but he did end up breaking that bone in his wrist. So he did, like right as the season was about to start, he was having surgery, getting that repaired, going out and playing not at 100%. And I think that really, really limited his ability to start getting in sync with Geno Smith on the NFL field. And And when we talk about, I mean, Jake Bobo was beating him out for snaps. Plus, you also have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett as the 1-2 in this offense. And JSN is coming in, and it's not even a really like a pass-heavy offense with Pete Carroll. Now we move into this year 2, and a lot of people are just like, hey, Tyler Lockett resigns for a 2-year deal. DK Metcalf's still there. Caleb, like, JSN, there's no way that this is going to be the breakout. He still is competing with everything that he was competing with last year. You had Shane Waldron as the head coach, so we have a coaching regime change. I think this is going to actually enhance the passing attack a little bit more, because if you actually look, Shane Waldron likes to run a little bit more 3 wide receiver sets, then 12 personnel, which was what Pete Carroll's bread and butter was. And so if we can get Jackson Smith and Jigba on the field where he's getting more than 93 targets in 17 games played, I mean, he was wide receiver 41 on targets, but if you look at his snap share, he was only wide receiver 7. So when he was getting out on the field, he was getting targets. It was just a matter of him getting out on the field because he only had a 65% snap share. If we can get JSN snap share somewhere between like a 75 to 80% snap share, which I think is really doable with the same target rate, which is a 19.7, he had a 17% target share, which isn't great, but it was a low passing offense and really wasn't able to get the targets, then I think a lot of things could change for JSN's overall profile. Now, I know I always say targets are earned, not given. So the fact that I'm saying that with the 70% target share, that is a little bit alarming. But if we assume that he's going to be out there a little bit more, I think we could be talking about JSN as an absolute breakout, because he was wide receiver 61 on route participation, wide receiver 39 on routes run, wide receiver 9 in slot snaps. So we do know that him being an electric slot level wide receiver, he's going to be getting the targets in the slot. And so I know there's a lot of people that you're a little bit worried about JSN and his current dynasty value when we're looking at him, right now hovering around Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, somewhere around overall player 55 to 65 on any given day. I think you just have to determine if you think the breakout's going to happen, and you have to go for it, because I think his value is very devalued right now, to the point where if you have him, you can't really trade him. And if you want to buy him, it's probably a pretty good buy low opportunity if you were looking into JSN, if you like JSN. I know a lot of people, like I said, are out on JSN right now. So I understand if you are one of those people. So let me know down below in the comments. I just think JSN, there's still a ton of potential to be had here, and I think the breakout is coming into year 2. My third player heading for Dynasty fantasy football stardom is going to be Anthony Richardson. And I hear you, Anthony Richardson is QB8 on keep trade cut, overall player 13. So you're like, Caleb, he's pretty much is priced already as a superstar, 21 years old. And I would agree with you, besides the fact that when we saw him play in the first 3 games before he got injured in that week 5 game, week 1, 21 fantasy points per game, week 2, 17 fantasy points per game. He got that concussion, so he was out week 3, week 4, 29 fantasy points per game was the QB2. So we saw some high-end quarterback production. Now, I know a lot of people are worried about the rushing attempts, like that's how he was getting hurt, but he averaged, like his floor is like almost 40 rushing yards per game, which is an extra like 4 fantasy points on top of his rushing touchdown upside, on top of his passing, ability. So for me, with Anthony Richardson, I think in year 2, the Colts, they need a healthy quarterback. So they're definitely going to have to learn how to use Anthony Richardson, how he can pick his spots. I know that's a big adjustment for a lot of these rushing quarterbacks going from junior or senior year in college football to year 1 in the NFL, is learning how much different you're playing against the best of the best, the biggest guys, bigger hits. Quarterbacks are protected in the NFL, but once you become a ball carrier, like, you can get hit. And Anthony Richardson did not get down, took a lot of hits. And while I know a lot of people are going to look at and say, hey, you know what, Caleb, Cam Newton had an amazing 3 to 4 year stretch, but then injuries finally caught up to him. So I just don't know if I'm going to be able to invest into Anthony Richardson. I hear that, but I think we're looking at year 2 of Anthony Richardson not only being able to know defenses just a little bit more, improving that passing attack, but last year the Colts were in regards to pace of play, they were number 3 in the NFL. So while I'm excited for that, with Anthony Richardson, we'll have to see how that actually translates to a full season of fantasy points per game. But when I'm looking at a guy that could potentially be breaking out on my dynasty roster, I think Anthony Richardson is right there. And when I say breakout, I mean fully breakout. We're talking about Anthony Richardson next season in the top 5 to top 6 quarterbacks. And I know he's right now at QB8. There's some guys that he's got to pass, like a Justin Herbert, like a Joe Burrow, like a Jalen Hurts. That's going to take a lot for him to pass even 2 spots. But I think when we're heading into next year, that is something that Anthony Richardson has the potential to do. I think with Shane Steichen leading this Colts overall offense, we'll have to see what they do in the draft. If they add another wide receiver, I am all on board the Anthony Richardson train. And giving you one final dynasty breakout that could potentially be happening in 24 is going to be Michael Mayer. And Michael Mayer fell to the 2nd round of the NFL draft this last year to the Raiders. We had Michael Mayer pre-processed as our tight end 1 over Dalton Kincaid. We saw how great Dalton Kincaid performed, but I thought Michael Mayer was just as good, if not a better prospect than Dalton Kincaid last year. And when we look at what he overall did, 5.1 fantasy points per game, was the tight end 30, 14 games, 40 targets, 27 receptions. Now, it took a little bit for Michael Mayer to actually fully start getting onto the field, but once he did, he was the tight end 16 on snap share, share, tight end 35 on targets, tight end 30 on a target share, tight end 31 on a target rate, target efficiency, tight end 18, tight end 12 on yards per target, yards per reception was tight end 9. Like that metric, really makes it stick out. Why I think Michael Mayer, if we're going into year 2, he was just competing, with Devontae Adams, with Jacoby Myers, and Aiden O'Connell. As much as you like to say that it was okay quarterback play, it was bottom 5 in the NFL quarterback play. Now, they did sign Gardner Minshew, who absolutely loves his tight ends, and so we're excited about the Gardner Minshew signing. We'll have to see if they trade up in the draft to get maybe their quarterback of the future. But I think Michael Mayer is being slept on heavily in the dynasty landscape right now. He is around tight end 12, and I understand a lot of it is projection because we saw Dalton Kincaid do it, so we're projecting Dalton Kincaid doing it, but we also know that he put up fantasy football points. So the projection here with the college dominator being a 35.8 for Michael Mayer, I just think he compares so great with his breakout age of 20 to like a guy like Zach Ertz. So can he come into this year 2 and really emerge as a 22-year-old who's going to be turning 23? I think all the potential is on Michael Mayer's side. And so I know when we're talking about dynasty breakouts, talking about dynasty stars, sometimes you haven't seen it before. Sometimes we've seen flashes. We saw flashes in college. We saw a little bit of flash in the NFL, but we need to see a little bit more of it to be really fully confident in Michael Mayer. But I love the profile, and I'm still buying in. I'm still holding. I'm still very bullish on Michael Mayer's overall production because in week 15, 13.9 fantasy points per game. Like, he had some bursts where he got over that 10 fantasy points per game mark, and in a tight end premium league, that's not absolutely great, but I'm excited for Michael Mayer. So let me know what you think of some of these dynasty breakouts down below. We're going to be bringing a ton more content this week, so make sure you tune in for that. Hit that like button if you're new. Hit that subscribe button if you like what we're doing over here and want to support us. Appreciate you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.